Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I rise to support the National Vocational Education and Training Regulator Amendment Bill of 2015. This bill builds upon this government's reform of the vocational education and training VET sector to ensure that Australia is equipped with a skilled workforce and a productive economy. This bill introduces measures to enhance the integrity of the VET system, provide an effective balance between protection and regulation of the VET system, and improve the efficiency and operation of the NVETR Act and consequently the Australian Skills Quality Authority. This government is working constructively to enhance the operation of Australia's VET system. The federal government will provide almost $6 billion this year alone in support for vocational education and training through direct funding for programs, support to the states and territories and student loans. In electorates such as Dobell, it's essential that this funding is directed at proven programs that meet the needs of our local labour market and sectors of the economy with a high demand for skilled workers. The 2011 census identified in Dobell 24% of residents aged over 15 had a certificate-level qualification. Only 18% have attained undergraduate and/or postgraduate qualifications. The census also identified manufacturing, trade, accommodation and food services, construction, healthcare and social assistance made up 62% of all employment within Dobell. Furthermore, 1/3 of employed persons aged 15 years and over nominated their occupation as labourers, machine operators, technicians or trade workers. With only 1 in 2 students in Dobell obtaining a Year 12 qualification, these numbers highlight the importance that vocational and education training plays on the Central Coast. And I engage on a regular basis with local job service agencies and apprentice support providers and other training organisations to ensure that the training they deliver is aligned with local job requirements. No benefit is derived from training for training's sake. Government funding must be directed at addressing local skill and job needs and providing training that addresses skill shortages within the local economy. Sadly, over recent years, this hasn't always been the case, and for too long we've seen taxpayers' money wasted on training that has failed to meet the employer and industry requirements and sadly has failed the student. In addition, the previous government failed to safeguard quality standards and allowed unscrupulous providers to operate unfettered. This has resulted in students who have completed training and unable to secure employment due to their skills and knowledge failing to meet workplace requirements and standards. For example, I've been informed in Dobell from cafe owners of situations where young people have presented with a Cert 2 in hospitality, but yet when they're placed in a practical workplace environment, they lack the necessary skills to meet the business needs, including the face-to-face customer service skills. In fact, it now appears, and particularly in Dobell, we have an oversupply of certified baristas and fitness instructors in the job market. And this is an example of training programs failing to consider the needs of the local employment market. But not only are these examples of misuse of taxpayers' funds, the results are psychologically damaging to job seekers who are trying to do the right thing, only to be let down by a training provider who has failed to equip them for the workplace. And this also places the student at an unfair financial disadvantage. The intent of this bill is to improve the quality of Australia's VET system by enhancing the quality of education and training provided by the VET sector, improving transparency in the marketing of VET courses, reducing the regulatory burden by lengthening registration periods and amending administrative arrangements to reduce red tape and better position the national regulator to investigate unscrupulous providers. But above all, this bill seeks to protect the integrity of the VET sector. This sector needs strong quality assurance in order to deliver high-quality training outcomes for students. Employers are entitled to have confidence in the training received by potential employees, and regardless of which organisation has provided the training, there should be consistent high standards to ensure that relevant knowledge and skills are taught to students. As a member of the Standing Committee on Education and Employment, a strong vocational training sector is an area that I strongly believe in. And our recently concluded inquiry into TAFE demonstrated the vastness of Australia's vet sector. The TAFE sector is the largest education and training provider in Australia, with 61 government-owned TAFE institutions and university TAFE divisions. While the federal government has no direct administrative role in TAFE, it does exercise a regulatory function through the Australian Skills Quality Authority by registering training organisations and accrediting courses. Through COAG, various levels of government have agreed to 6 objectives for the vet system, including a national system of streamlined industry-defined qualifications with flexibility to respond to major national and state priorities and emerging areas of skills needs, a modern and responsive national regulatory system that applies a risk management approach and supports a competitive and well-functioning market, and ensuring that consumers are provided with the information they need to make choices about providers and training that meets their needs. These objectives, whilst focused specifically at TAFE, form the basis of amendments within this legislation. This bill is addressing concerns that have been raised in relation to the ability of the vet sector to respond to emerging issues promptly and effectively. Such delays have the potential to impact upon the quality of training offered by registered training organisations. The bill establishes the capacity for the Minister for Education and Training to develop and enforce standards in relation to quality in the vet sector. Quality standards will focus the quality of training by establishing a new standard to address emerging issues which impact on the quality and integrity of training for individuals and students. Importantly, the quality standards will ensure that unanticipated changes in the vet sector can be quickly addressed in a timely manner. These new powers will provide the Commonwealth the equivalent of emergency powers to address known or emerging quality issues that compromise student interests and in the quality of outcomes. It will also provide industry and the individual states and territories a direct avenue of action to the Commonwealth to urgently address areas of concern. Prior to the issuing of a standard, the Minister will consult with key stakeholders, including the state and territory ministers, along with industry partners, and furthermore, standards will be issued within weeks, providing better protection for students. Currently, it can take up to 12 months to change a standard, and this is simply too long to make a change if they are critical issues impacting on the quality of the training being provided to students. The quality standard will become a condition of registration for registered training organisations. This bill will also enhance the requirements of advertising and offering of vet courses. And this is in response to concerns raised in regard to methods undertaken by some registered training organisations in respect to the marketing of their courses. Currently, arrangements mean that it can be at times unclear to students who are enrolling online who is actually responsible for delivering their course. And this bill will provide greater transparency by requiring individuals marketing vet courses, including brokers, to be explicit in their communication and advertising to prospective students about which organisation will be responsible for issuing the qualification or statement of attainment. And under these reforms, when a student receives marketing material, they will be able to clearly identify the registered training organisation responsible for the qualification they are signing up to complete. Under this amendment, the Australian Skills Quality Authority will be able to pursue anyone, not just training providers, who fail in their obligation to demonstrate who is responsible for the quality of the training. This government is committed to ensuring that students receive the highest quality education and training through our vet system. And these reforms continue to build upon the work the government is undertaking to improve quality in the vet sector. Already we've introduced tough new regulatory standards for training providers, which came into effect on the 1st of January 2015 for new providers, and which will also apply to existing providers from the 1st of April 2015. In addition, the Australian Skills Quality Authority is moving towards a risk management model of regulation to ensure focus is on those who are doing the wrong thing. On the 19th of January, this government launched the National Training Complaints Hotline, which is a joint initiative with the states and territories to provide a single point to make it easier for complaints to be heard and actioned. And following this announcement, I visited Peter Wilcoxon, Managing Director for a small local business, Express Lube in Dobell. Now, Peter employs 9 apprentices across his business, and he welcomed the news by saying, as a small business operator, it's important that apprentices are well educated and able to adapt to working in a workshop. However, this hasn't always been the case, and from experience, I see apprentices arrive at my business not knowing basic mechanical theories, and in some cases we're talking about second-year apprentices. Peter's comments back up the actions of this government and the need to improve the quality and standard of training provided to students in the VET system. And it's inexcusable to see people arriving at work with training under their belt, not knowing basic theories and unable to do their job. This is the sort of feedback that can be reported to the National Training Complaints Hotline and investigated. The government's reforms require an effective national regulator, and we want the Australian Skills Quality Authority to spend less time dealing with compliance and more time addressing unscrupulous practices and dodgy operators. The bill makes a suite of administrative amendments to strengthen the national regulator and to better place them to fulfil the above objectives. The regulator has, in the course of conducting its functions, identified a number of areas where administrative improvements may reduce regulatory burden and improve efficiency. These administrative amendments seek to streamline and improve processes in addition to reducing the regulatory burden on the sector, and these include enabling the regulator to request information from a person holding themselves out as a regulated entity, clarifying that all organisations that are constitutional corporations covered by the civil penalty and offence provisions are prescribed in Part 6 of the NVETR Act, and improving the sharing of VET information between agencies. In another step to reduce the regulatory burden on the sector, the bill seeks to increase the registration period for providers from 5 to 7 years. And this amendment allows the Australian Skills Quality Authority to better target its resources towards high-risk registered training organisations. Now, we are continuing to fulfil our commitment to reduce red tape and compliance in order to strengthen our economy and reduce costs to business. But importantly, this is a cut in red tape for those registered training organisations that do the right thing. And rather having to re-register every 5 years, organisations will only have to go through the process every 7 years. This amendment will allow the regulator to redirect its effort away from the renewal process and focus on better targeted and more random auditing, compliance and enforcement actions against poor quality providers. And this is in response to findings by the Australian Skills Quality Authority, who stated that re-registration-based auditing is a less effective approach to quality assurance when compared with targeted or random audit activities. Now, our reforms are forged in partnership with students, employers, training providers and the states and territories, with a common goal to improve the quality of Australia's VET sector. The days of training for training's sake are over, as are the days of unscrupulous operators taking advantage of students and the Australian taxpayer. And this government is looking at further action beyond this legislation before the House. We will crack down on inducements such as free iPads or cash rebates, tighten marketing practices and enhance duty of care provisions for training providers to abide by when they sign up a student to a student loan. It is unconscionable for training providers to offer such incentives in order to sign up students and receive government payments. If this is their approach to attracting students, you do have to wonder what level of education and training are they providing to vulnerable young people. The lack of a regulated compliance framework unfortunately has seen vulnerable students taken advantage of by these dodgy training providers, and we will be seeking to address the rapid expansion also of the vet fee help and its misuse by providers. The Australian government has committed $68 million over 4 years to Australian Skills Quality Authority to enforce these new standards, and we will continue to reform the Australian vet sector to ensure the needs of students are front and centre and that they receive the necessary education and training to address labour force shortages. This is the only approach that we believe will deliver lasting benefits for students, such as those on the Central Coast, where vet amounts for a quarter of our post-school qualifications. It's also the only approach that will best prepare residents on the Central Coast for employment in our local market, labour market. With over 50% of local jobs found in industry heavily dependent on vocational education training, we must ensure that students are spending their time preparing for work in fields where there are available jobs. And I'm proud to be a member of a government that is delivering real support to students undertaking vocational training and education, including trade support loans and a new Australian apprenticeship support network to commence on the 1st of July. And I will continue to work along local vet providers on the Central Coast and ensure that this government strengthens our vet providers and enhance the prospects of our local students.
The honourable member's time has expired.